I try to be supportive of my colleagues because this business is it's a crazy situation.
Is this? Oh, this mic's really loud.
Yeah, that's
we got a new mic and a new mic stand, so it'll be easier to talk. But
Yeah.
I mean, that's cool. It's cool seeing people carrying guns. I think we got to repeal the NFA. I think. I mean, I'm pretty. I went from being like a moderate gun control kind of guy. We're like, well, maybe we could have something to a staunch like, nope, all legal, all of it, all the time. What do you think?
I think that's right. Because
All right.
Here's the deal. So I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. So I'm gonna give you the full story. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, where, gun ownership is taboo. In the inner city, the problem is that people have guns and people die, which is legit. That's just the way of life growing up in the inner city. And so the politicians and the media feed this narrative of, oh my gosh, guns are evil, so nobody can have them. The truth of the matter is that if law-abiding citizens had the ability to possess firearms with minimal restrictions, no restrictions, what you would see is the criminal element would understand, you know what, I can't act crazy because I'm not sure who's carrying. The vast majority of people just want to live in harmony and peace with one another. They're not trying to cause problems. But when the criminal element understands that the politicians restrict gun ownership to the degree where normal people feel it's taboo and it's the wrong thing to do, it actually empowers the criminal element.
It's kind of sad because I just feel like common sense, obvious. I've heard it a million times throughout my life that an unarmed society is a polite society. If people in the cities were armed, then criminals would be scared of them because you have equal force to be used against you. But it doesn't seem to get through to these gun control advocates. And now we have Joe Biden coming out with the, what was his slogan? Let's get the job done, or was it? Finish the job.
I don't really know what he was talking about. He was yelling too much for me.
He was slurring a bit too. But he said, let's finish the job, ban assault weapons.
Right.
And they can't even define what it is. So this goes back to what I was just asking Congresswoman Boebert.
Right.
How do you affect change in a positive direction with through logical lens to make things better if your political opponents don't know what they're talking about?
Well, the first part is, I always go back to Gladiator. I'm going to date myself a little bit. I'm 44.
That movie with Russell, what was it?
Listen, Gladiator was that movie.
That was a good movie.
That was that movie. And, the advice.
Yeah, Joaquin Phoenix.
The advice to, to Russell Crowe, Maximus, in the movie was, you win the crowd, you win your freedom. And so on a philosophical level, politics hasn't really changed. Politics, the art of politics, is really about, can you get enough people in the body populace, in the population, to be with you? If you can get enough of them to be with you, then you have the political will to move the argument, to move the bill, to move the policy. But if you never get the people to see your side and be on your side, you can't win your freedom. That's the way you can actually, in some respects, break Washington loose. Because for a long time, as a conservative, the media is against you, that. Republicans largely have been terrible at messaging. We know that. So it ends up becoming people deciding to engage in politics and policy of their own volition, of their own passions. And the nut, I think that, I guess the new age, myself, Boebert, and others, Gates and others, that we're trying to crack is there the possibility to get your average American to look at our arguments and be like, you know what, that Byron dude is right. I like what he's saying.
I think
and that's the pathway.
I think the internet helped greatly.
Big time.
But I also think there's an inverse reaction too, because you end up with these people. One of the examples of social media manipulation I've brought up is that imagine you're 10 years old in 2008.
Right.
Facebook is just coming into popularity and prominence, or it's getting bigger and bigger. And these companies like BuzzFeed and Huffington Post find out that what kind of article gets the most traffic? Police brutality.
100%.
So they start making more and more and more of it.
Right.
Now you're a little kid and you're on Facebook, and the only thing you see every single day is more and more videos of police brutality.
Right.
Rap songs about it. I don't know if you've seen that rap song, "This is what happens when you call the cops."
I mean, I'm a hip hop kid, so I even go back to NWA, Ice Cube, Snoop. That's how far I go back.
Yeah.
I'm a hip hop kid. I love hip hop.
So you're a little kid, and you're seeing this, nothing but this, for 10 years.
Right.
10 years later, you're 18. You're ready to vote. Your whole world is shaped around this idea that police are going around mercilessly murdering people and targeting black people. Yeah. And it's just an extreme insane exaggeration built by social media manipulation. So as much as the internet empowered the ability of conservatives who tended to have a bad messaging or were locked out from the media, you end up with people who are living in a deranged state, like Trump derangement syndrome from this stuff. Like, how do you reach these people? And I mean, how do you, it feels like the country's bifurcated to the point where, to put it another way, you've got the West Coast wanting to ban gas vehicles. You've got some states banning child sex change operations, some states becoming sanctuaries for child sex change operations. I don't see how you pull that stuff together. How do you bring these cultures back together?
I mean, look, it's very difficult, but that's where programs like yours come in. You know, I mean, Bobert was like, hey, Byron, you got to come in and do this podcast tonight. I said, you know, whose podcast are we doing? She's like, I'm going to tell you about him. It's great. I said, all right, cool. I'm in. I'm going to do it.
Cool.
You have to do programming like this. I think that the way that our party has done messaging is you deal with the Washington Post, the New York Times, MSNBC, NBC, CBS, ABC. They hate your guts. You know you're going to get a hard interview. When Fox came along 30 years ago, Fox was like a revelation for the conservative movement, for the Republican Party. Just being honest, it was a revelation, right?
Yeah.
But because young people taking information on this thing at warp speed, because I got 3 kids, you look at their phones, they don't even watch TV anymore. So I try to tell my colleagues, I'm like, guys, don't get me wrong, doing interviews is cool. But there's a whole nother ecosystem you have to penetrate. How do you do it? Do you do it through reels? Do you do it with shorts? Do you do it with responses to some narrative out in media? And it's not just doing it once. It's not just saying, oh, I went on, and this is no disrespect to Sean Hannity, love the dude, good dude, but it's not just doing a Hannity primetime hit. It's, are you in a rapid fire response, pushing narratives, pushing messages, what's actually happening, being able to explain the thing in 90 seconds. Like, you don't have 20 minutes. And don't get me wrong, like, look, I'm about as eloquent as they come. People love listening to me. I don't got 20 minutes. I got 90 seconds to get this thing right.
But think about even in Congress, you had 5 minutes to question Twitter?
Right.
How do you get through a deep conversation to break down the issues that are negatively impacting this country if they're like, your 5 minutes begins now, good luck?
Well, that's why I tried to change the rules. So what I've been talking to the chairman and to the speaker was, we got to get out of this mindset of every member is recognized for 5 minutes. That's ridiculous. By the time you get warmed up, the time is over. And then the other thing is, a lot of members waste time because they're trying to fill their time. And then the third piece is staff members write most of the questions and most of these speeches. So you'll see the member like this and they'll be reading their thing like this. And they'll never look at the person sitting in the chair. Their eyes are down because they're reading it. You don't have an opportunity to engage in a legitimate dialogue on the issues presented. So my position has always been, look, get rid of seniority recognition, get rid of the 5 minutes, have the chairman recognize members as they choose to be recognized. What you would have is a dialogue between members, a dialogue with the witnesses. Then you can get into a situation like that. Oh, I don't have my 5 minutes. I got one question. I threw out a question. Ocasio-Cortez does whatever she does on the other side. I look at it like, oh, that's a bunch of BS. Chairman, let me in. I come back, fire back. That's how you get the dialogue moving. That's what Congress doesn't do.
Right.
Because Congress is fixated on doing your clip for a newsreel that might show up in one of the network news shows at night. Or maybe the New York Times might report on it, or the Philadelphia Inquirer, or whatever, or the LA Times. We're in a different genre in media. And so you got to have that conflict in a positive way to get the message out to people to see what's really happening.
What do you think about the squad? How is your relationship with them?
So I talked to some of them on the side. You know, I just keep it professional. Again, I grew up in the inner city. So for me, it's never personal until you mess with like my personal safety or my family or my money. You do that, now it's personal. Everything else is business.
Is that why in Congress? Because people are getting like basically bribed by, you know, pharmaceutical companies, they're whoever, they're what do they call them, lobbyists, that they actually feel like you're threatening their money if you're passing a bill that denies their lobbyists?
No. That's not even it, because the truth is about lobbyists is they're going to write you a check regardless. What a lobbyist really wants is access. They want to be able to be like, look, if I pass you a $5,000 check, if I call your staff, or if I happen to have your cell phone, will you answer my call and give me an opportunity to explain myself? Lobbyists are counting votes, which also is what leadership in both chambers is doing. They're counting votes. That's all they're doing. I tell people at home all the time, look, if you call my office, just you by yourself, I'm not even gonna, I don't even know that you called. If 100 people called my office, my chief of staff knows, and she's like, hey, Byron, we had 100 calls on this issue. If 1,000 people call, my whole office knows what's going on, and I definitely know what's going on. That's how this works. The lobbyists, all they're doing is trying to have an ability to have a conversation with the member. If you have members who change their opinions just because of what a lobbyist says, you got a weak member. That person probably needs to go home and not be an elected official. Real talk, right? But the issue is not just the lobbyist per se. When I talk about being able to talk with members on the other side, squad members, me and Jamal Bowman, we talk football. We don't even talk politics. We know we don't agree on politics. So we're talking about the NFL. We talk football. And because we talk football, we have an ability to engage each other if there's something popping up where a conversation needs to be had. With the squad members, for everybody who says, oh, Freedom Caucus members are always causing problems in Republican leadership, squad members cause problems in Democrat leadership. They do the same thing on the other side, but our politics are so different. That's why people think we're always at odds with them.
They seem to be marching more in lockstep with the rest of the party these days, though, especially when it comes to war.
I would argue that what they've done on their side is they've gotten their party to march in lockstep with them.
Wow.
You know how many Democrat members are afraid of being primaried by squad members or potential squad members? A lot of them.
I kind of like that, to be honest.
But I'm just keeping it real. You know why Chuck Schumer was acting, was wilding out and starting to say all these positions? He didn't want to be primaried by AOC. That's why.
I hope she doesn't.
And look, Cortez,
I love it,
me and Cortez, I talk to her every now and again, but Chuck Schumer didn't want that smoke. I promise you that. He didn't want that action.
I gotta say about AOC.
Right.
One of the biggest issues I have is she's talking about January 6th, and she fabricated a story about what happened. So she says that she's in her office and someone knocks on the door, and then she hides in the bathroom and someone says, where is she? Where is she? And all this stuff. And then you get the response from the conservatives saying she wasn't even in the Capitol building. Then you get the response from the media saying, yeah, but they're all connected. Then I looked at this and I was like, her story took place an hour before the Capitol was even breached.
Yeah.
Why would she hide in the bathroom thinking someone was coming for her unless she knew in advance people were going to break into the building? Or her story's fake?
Well, I mean, look, she lives by the drama code of politics. It's like the other thing where she was at the protest in front of the Supreme Court and she tried to fake like she got arrested.
Yeah, she put her hands behind her back.
She put her hands behind her back and then raised her hand. I'm like, come on, sis, you ain't getting no cuffs on you, because if you did, you couldn't, it's stuff like that. So she lives by the drama of politics. It is what it is. But I think that what has happened in both parties is that you've had the reflection of voters who are tired of establishment politics. They're tired of being given a false narrative or a half a narrative that isn't really real, that because there's some deal cut up here in Capitol Hill that the people don't know about, they're cut out of the process. And so what we call the squad on the other side is really the culmination of the Occupy movement a decade ago. What you call Freedom Caucus members on our side is really the fulfillment of the Tea Party wave 10 years ago, because voters on both sides of the political spectrum have had enough of business as usual in Washington, D.C. That's actually a good thing. So what's happened in the Democrat caucus is the reason why it appears that the squad just kind of goes along. They've actually moved their caucus on a myriad of issues. Bruh, they're out here talking about how it's cool to transgender kids. Joe Biden that was not his position a decade ago. I promise you that. But the reason why he's got to be cool with that now is because that is where the base of his party has gone, in part because of members like the squad and activists in the Democrat base. That's what's happened.
I feel like that is a representation of analogous to fire. a chaotic, destructive force that is spreading. I think that if you actually, you know what? I don't think this. I know this. If you go to your average American and you show them the book Genderqueer, for instance, you've heard about this book?
I've heard about it. Yeah.
And it's got graphic images in it. It's a pretty messed up book if you read the whole thing too. And it's sad. It's this woman was traumatized. But when I tell regular people this, and we live and work about a half an hour away from where that big Loudoun County fight was happening with these schools, they say that's not true. I say, here is a physical copy of the book. Open it up. They look at it and they say, this had to have been one school. And so what you end up with is people like the Squad, people in their activist base, which I believe represents a very small percentage of this country, who are advocating for extremist policies, either open borders, abolishing private health care, child sex change operations, things like that. And when you talk to regular Americans, they don't believe it's actually happening.
Right. They don't.
I don't. They actually want to abolish private health care?
Yes.
Not just establish a public option?
The public option was a pathway to universal health care. Always was. And so one of the things when Scott Brown got elected in Massachusetts, the reason why Nancy Pelosi just pushed for Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act is because she understood that if they did the push for a public option, it would have completely blown up the bill and there would be no Obamacare. So her position was, let's just get the thing we got right now because we can't send it back to the Senate because we don't have 60 votes anymore. We got 59. And if it comes back this way, it's done. And that's what happened. So they're still mad because they thought the game plan was public option because public option would have eviscerated private insurance. Because everybody would have just dumped people into the public option. That's what they wanted. But it didn't happen because Scott Brown got elected. Those are facts.
Bernie Sanders campaigned during the 2020 election primaries not on creating a private and public multifaceted system, but outright abolishing all private health care, which has never. It's not even like all the countries they tout in Europe. They have both.
They have both.
Yeah. So I mean, even my advocacy, I've been like, you know, if a kid gets the flu, I think it would be great if he could go to the doctor and get Tamiflu. If you broke your arm, you could go in and get it taken care of, and you don't got to worry about going bankrupt. I think a lot of Americans worry about that stuff. And then if you get something like advanced lymphoma, which requires expensive bills, you know, a certain amount of it is covered, but there's limitations to what we can provide. So I'm not fully on board with we can cure every disease for every single person. I'm in the middle where it's like it'd be nice if people had some basic level of coverage. But what's being proposed by the progressives is one of the most extreme positions in the world.
Right. Yeah, I understand socialized emergency care. If someone falls down and breaks their arm and they are poor, you help that person. But socialized chronic care,
which we basically have, we have that now.
And that's cool because you want to save a life. But when people eat themselves into sickness and then I expect the taxpayer to cover their injections of random Pfizer drugs, I'm not into it. I don't want to pay for people to eat sickness. Like sugar is horrible for your body if you overdose on that stuff.
Well, I like Snickers, man. Hold on, man. I like Snickers. Don't do that. But I know your point. I see your point. I get your point. I think the key thing is that, you know, the issue with the Democrats is it's never good enough. They constantly are pushing for the next wave because what they fully ultimately want is complete control of the industry. That's what they want. They'll never say that in campaigns. They'll never say that in speeches. But when you ask them, well, when is enough enough? They'll be like Joe Biden said the other day, let's finish the job. Well, finish what job, bro? You just spent $5 trillion we don't have. We're at the debt ceiling now. You created a labor shortage in our economy. Like when you pay people to stay home, what you do is create a labor shortage. What do I mean by that? Number one, you don't have to go work 40 hours because there's money coming in from somewhere else. But you still have the same amount of money to buy product. So people aren't working to the level necessary to create all the products at a certain cost. But everybody's got money to buy it. Well, what does that mean? Heavy demand, limited supply means the prices go up. That's what's happened in the economy. Joe Biden did that. Absolutely. You had the Inflation Reduction Act, which was like one of the biggest misnomers in American history. That thing doesn't do anything for inflation. It was the Green New Deal's little sister. That's what it was. That was in that bill. The infrastructure bill was a prelude to Build Back Better. They just couldn't get the votes because he wanted to spend too much money. If Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema were like, yeah, we're cool spending another $4 trillion, Build Back Better would have been law. Facts. That's the deal. So where we're at right now, you got to understand a couple things. One, you cannot just spend money recklessly. The laws of economics don't change. I don't care who you are. I don't care how well you speak. I don't care how cool you are. I don't care what your fit looks like. You cannot spend money unilaterally. The laws of economics don't change. It hits everybody. Don't believe me? Ask the Weimar Republic.
So people super chatted us the other day.
Right.
When he said, let's finish the job.
Right.
We had a great super chat. Sorry, I can't remember the name of the individual who chatted us, but he said he's referring to jamming the knife in the back of the gasping corpse of the economy.
Yeah.
He's saying, let's finish it off. And to those that know his policies have resulted in damage, chaos, inflation, et cetera, it sounds like he's saying, let's make it worse.
Like, I'm not tinfoil hat guy. That's not me. Like, I'm a city kid, man. I deal in common sense. My grandmother, God rest her soul, was from Jamaica. She would always be like, Byron, you have to have common sense, boy. You must think right. That was her. I deal in common sense. But when you look at the policy outcomes of where they want to take us, that's only because the only way you can fundamentally make changes in our economy, which is the best by far, the best in the history of the world, is you have to make it so hard to earn money. You have to make it so difficult to keep wealth that there has to be some fix from Washington, D.C. And the fix is only more control up here with people who, frankly, with all due respect to my colleagues, they don't have the intellect to manage your life. They don't have it.
I know one thing that they've done. We got a bunch of new people coming in.
Is that who that is?
A lot of the when they printed all this money, they're telling American people that trust us, modern monetary theory. But
That's crazy.
What the trick is they're not investing the money in infrastructure programs, production and things.
Right.
That's monetary theory, is that you print $10 trillion, you put it into factories so that you start producing goods that are worth more than the 10 trillion. They're not producing the things, they're just putting it in bank accounts.
Look, let me keep it real simple about modern monetary. For every one of your listeners that's got a little brother or a little sister, let them just spend whatever they want, regardless of how much money's in the family's bank account. How's that gonna work? It's an unmitigated disaster. And mom's gonna be mad. Somebody's getting a spanking. I still believe in spanking. I got kids. I spank my kids. It's whatever. Social media can get mad at me, but it is what it is. Somebody's in trouble. You cannot just spend money without any controls on what comes in. Nobody can do that. If you borrow money incessantly, you create the situation where republics have fallen. That's what's happened to too many republics in the history of the world. So when you have conservatives like myself who say, look, control spending, make sure you're doing it the right way. When you do that, you create the environment for economies to thrive, for people to grow, etc. Real quick, because I'm going to do it a quick segue. Because he usually segues for me. I get the opportunity to segue from him. Ladies and gentlemen, man sitting down in the room right now. He is the forerunner of what it means to bring the diesel, to question people. This is the guy you see with no jacket on, but a tie and a dress shirt. He is the guy that myself, Bobert, and so many of us have watched on TV and in committee hearings, grilling the Democrats day after day after day. This is one of the forerunners of the conservative movement in our country, my good friend, the honorable from Ohio, Jim Jordan.
Byron, thank you. Tim, good to be with you.
Yeah, how's it going, man?
I'm doing fine. Byron's doing the interview here now. He's
Byron.
listen. I've been down to Naples and talked to all his Republican buddies. I was gonna start though with what is it called? Chicken City?
Yeah.
So my wife, she literally built. We have 8 acres out in the country around her family's farm. She built her. I call it the Taj Mahal. She built her own chicken coop from scratch. She did it all. And now we have the security camera stuff up, but she can watch her chickens via the security camera. So we got great eggs and all. But I understand you guys are. This is your thing too. So this is amazing.
Yeah, we have Chicken City. We've got, I think, 30 or so chickens. We've got a camera. You can watch them all day. There used to be a couple, but now it's just one. Watching them all do their chicken stuff.
Yeah.
Chickens are hilarious.
They are funny.
Yeah.
She's had to save come out yelling to get the fox away because she had started with 9 and she's down to 5, but we still get plenty of eggs. I don't know if you do that. They probably don't do that in Naples.
Jim,
like
I
they do
love
up
you,
in,
man, but
up
I
in
don't do
hillbilly
chickens,
land
man.
where
That's
we're
just
from.
not me. I go to the supermarket and get the eggs, though,
Yeah.
so I appreciate all
Ours
you
are
do to
cheaper.
provide.
Ours are cheaper right
But,
now.
I'm gonna come by. They're cheaper.
Yeah.
Because I got sons and they eat like eggs all the time because they're all lifting weights and whatnot, and I'm out on
Training.
that.
Good.
They're training all the time. Real quick, I want to ask you this one question, and then I'm gonna turn it over because I'm not an interviewer. I answer too many questions these days. My question for you, and I've never asked you this question.
Okay.
What was the thing? What was the aha moment that made you realize that conservatism was the path forward for the country?
I was raised in a conservative family. Although my dad was a Democrat, he was a union worker for General Motors, and like a lot of Americans in 1980, decided enough of this Democrat stuff. He's gonna vote for the Reagan guy. But raised in a conservative kind of Christian home, but for me, it's probably athletics. The idea in America is you set a goal, you work hard, and you try to accomplish things, and that seemed to fit with conservatism. And my background is a sport of wrestling. I wanted to play football, but I'm 5'7.5" on a good day, so I had to wrestle. But yeah, it's probably wrestling because it's all about competition. I think it's one of the problems in the country today is people. You don't have people competing, and frankly, I don't think you have enough people just involved in being tough. No one gets in a fight in school anymore. You don't have enough kids playing football or wrestling. I think that's a problem. So probably came from my background in the sport of wrestling because I started when I was in 3rd grade and did it for the longest time.
Did you want to be a professional wrestler, Jim?
No, there's no real professional wrestling and amateur wrestling. I wanted to be a state
You never
champ
wanted to
and
be
NCAA.
WWE champion?
No, that's for big guys like you, Byron. That's for guys like you.
So time out, real side point, and I'm gonna give up the headset and the microphone. So I went to a WWE event
Oh golly.
in my district, right?
Yeah.
Because I actually like pro wrestling.
Yeah.
It's a thing for me.
Yeah.
I like the showmanship and all that. It's fun. It's interesting. So I go in the locker room, right? They gave me like the treatment. They're like, we're gonna bring superstars in to meet with you. I was like, okay, cool. You know the thing I realized? I'm bigger than most of the dudes on the
Really?
roster. I got pictures with Big E, who was WWE champion at the time before he broke his neck because somebody did a suplex and they messed him up. Hopefully, shout to Big E. Hopefully he comes back. But I took a picture with the Money in the Bank briefcase. I got
Yeah.
a picture with it, and I'm like
See, I
3
don't know.
inches taller, and I'm like thicker than him, and I'm like, oh, I could do this.
The only WWE people I know are the ones who are in real wrestling. Gable Stevenson was 3-time NCAA champ and Olympic champ, and now he's went in WWE and doing fine. And he's a guy who's 275. He wins the Olympics, and 275, 6 foot whatever, does a round off into a full back layout, and I'm like, 265 can do. I mean, he's an athlete, so they are athletes, but it's entertainment.
Okay, that's the end of my WWE dreams because I'm 275, and trust me, I ain't doing that no more. So we're done.
All right, well,
Sorry, Vince
let's-
can't sign me.
Let's talk